Hello everyone. I am not sure if I am visible or audible right now. If I'm visible and audible to you right now, could you please give me a heads up? Hi Ayush. Hello sir. How are you? Uh, I see a couple of people here already. I would like to know whether I'm visible or not. If I'm visible or audible because I can't see that on my stream right now. So if it is so, then please do let me know. Hello, Shubhangi ma'am. Hello, Ayush. How are you? All right, without wasting much time, I believe there is some technical internet problem happening at my end. What we are going to do is we will start right away with whatever we have to do today. So, welcome everyone. Welcome to EduCrack. My name is Shreya. Today, we'll be talking about the know-hows of summary-based questions or the parasummary questions. So, what exactly are parasummary questions? Parasummary questions are, I won't say they are the latest addition to CAT, but they are pretty new in the history of CAT. They've come up very recently. Thank you so much for the confirmation that I'm visible and audible. Thank you so much. And as I was saying, that parasummary questions are a new entrant in the CAT question bank as such. I won't say very new, but maybe in the last 12 years they have made an entrance. And the agenda of parasummary questions is very simple. They ask you to read a paragraph and then they ask you to find the summary of the paragraph. So basically, the expectation from you as a student is that you will be summarizing the information that is given in the paragraph. Now, what happens here is that this paragraph that they want you to look at is definitely not going to be a simple easy paragraph, right? They want to check a couple of things. Parasummary questions have also started appearing in other exams as well, where they want to check your reading skills. So in today's session, we'll talk a bit about the theory part of parasummary questions or the summary based questions, but majorly we'd want to solve some questions, because the only way to get across or to get through these questions is to understand the question type and how do we approach these questions. So, and that can be learned only via solving some more questions. So let's have a look at what exactly are parajumble questions. So what exactly are these questions? These are prominent question type in CAT every year, at least till last year. You get up to 2 to 3 questions of parajumbles. You are supposed to accurately summarize a paragraph. So this is a prominent question type because it appears almost every year, right? Then you have to accurately summarize a paragraph. That basically means you're supposed to read the entire passage and then you're supposed to give a summary to the passage. What do they expect from you when it comes to the parasummary questions? The expectation from you is that they will check you on your reading skills. So they would want to see your reading speed. They would want to see your reading comprehension. Am I clear right now? I hope, because I can't see a streaming from my end. I hope that I'm visible to you people. Just give me a minute. Let me see what is wrong at my end. So yeah, there was some technical problem happening at my end. I'm so sorry for the break. So again, coming back to this, we have reading skills. We need to understand how to summarize. So they want to check your summarizing skills, right? What do you mean by summarizing skills? What is summary? Summary is basically the essence of the passage. So here they want you to understand and you should be able to express the essence of the passage. What do you mean by the essence? Essence of the passage basically means that they want you to look at what is the core idea that they want to convey in the passage. They want to check whether you're able to read between the lines or not. What is reading between the lines? Some things are mentioned very clearly and some things are supposed to be understood. So reading between the line means what is to be understood. Then there is ability to stick to the information in the passage. In a summary based questions, what is the most important thing is actually the ability to stick to the information in the question, right? In the options that are given to you, you would see something which could be read between the lines, which could be inferred from the passage, but is probably not mentioned, or something that appeals to your common sense. What do you mean by appeals to your common sense? So you read something and you feel this is what should logically follow, or this is what should happen, ideally in ideal circumstances. So in that case, if you lack the ability to focus, if you lack the ability to stick to the information in the passage, then problem comes, because then you would start trying to extrapolate. So in these questions, what is a big no? That is extrapolation. What is extrapolation? Extrapolation basically means that there is an information which is not given in the passage, and still you want to infer it, or you want to think about it because it appeals to your common sense. मुझे ऐसा लगता है कि ये भी होगा क्योंकि इसका मतलब तो यही है. So when this thought comes in your mind that, and I think it could be so, then that is a problem. If it is not mentioned in the passage, then that is an issue. I have a question here which says, ma'am, is there any difference between essence of the passage and tone of the passage? Absolutely. So essence of the passage basically means the message that the passage is trying to convey, the author is trying to convey. The tone of the passage basically means what was the mood of the author while writing this passage, right? What was the mood of the author, or what was the emotion that he wants to express? So essence of the passage versus tone of the passage, I'd say that it is regarding content, the information will take you to the essence of the passage, but the kind of words, the kind of adjectives or adverbs used will take you to the tone of the passage, right? So this is the difference between essence of the passage and tone of the passage. Then you have to definitely understand the tones. One of the biggest tricks in solving summary based questions is the understanding of tones. If you're able to understand the tone of the passage, it helps you narrow down from the options. What are tones of the passage? Now, effectively, there are three tones. There is a positive tone, there is a negative tone, and then there is a neutral tone, right? So positive tone basically means that whatever the author is saying, it is in a positive light. He's in a positive frame of mind. He'll be using good adjectives. He'll be using adjectives that bring out the positive in the information that is given to you. Negative tone basically means that he's probably not happy, or he's angry, or he's sad, or there is some kind of negative emotion involved in the information that is coming your way through the author. So the author is trying to tell you that he probably is not very happy with what he's writing, or he's not happy writing about it. Neutral tones are where it is majorly used in giving simple information. There are no emotions attached to it. So positive tones will have positive emotion, negative tones will have a negative emotion, and neutral tones will have a neutral emotion. How do we use this? How do we use this understanding in solving parajumble questions? What happens is that when you are summarizing a passage, you have to understand that the summary of the passage will be of the same tone, right? When I say it will be of the same tone, that means if my passage is positive in nature, if I'm getting positive vibes from the passage, the summary that I'm looking at from the options will not have a negative vibe to it, and this will help you eliminate options, right? So this is why understanding of tones is pretty crucial when it comes to solving of these parajumble questions. Now, how do we approach a parajumble question? What is it that you have to do? The things that you need to do when you look at a parajumble question, right? So first thing is a very careful reading of the paragraph, right? What do you mean by that? It is as simple as it says. Read every word. Here we are not attempting any skimming or any scanning or any quick reading or reading the summary first. No, we are not doing that. We do not read the options first when it comes to the para summary questions, right? Why? The moment you start reading options here, you will get confused. If you read the options before you read the para summary, you will get confused. Please take it in written. All right. So first thing that you need to do is a very careful reading of the paragraph. Read it very carefully, underline all the words that you think you are not very sure of. Try to find out the contextual meaning of the words, and try to understand what is there. Try to pick the subject matter. Understand what is the probable topic that they are talking about. Sometimes it comes across very easily to us, sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it can actually confuse you quite a lot. For example, if I'm a science student, and I am a science student, and you give me a passage based on psychology or based on biology, I may be able to understand that better, right? Because I'm a science student. However, if you give me a passage based on economics or world politics or geography, that could create a problem for me because I'm not very well versed with the subject. So first thing that I need to do is I should very carefully read the paragraphs, and then I will try to understand what is the probable subject matter. It helps me pave my way. Then separate ideas from examples. When we are looking at summary of a question or summary of a passage, we need to identify the ideas. The examples will only confuse us, right? When we are looking to solve a question, examples are there only to make a point clear. They are the part of the passage which is going to confuse you when you are trying to summarize it, especially if there are many options, right? So separate the ideas from the examples. Examples are supposed to be ignored when you're looking for the summary. So here, ignore the examples, because the summary will not effectively contain an example. I mean, it very rarely, very rarely happens that, in a Parasummary question in the options, the correct answer has an example, because they are trying to find the essence of the passage. Essence means the main point. An example is just a helper. Paraphrase. What do you mean by paraphrase? Paraphrasing basically means converting your own, converting the information that is given to you in your own words. So paraphrasing basically, technically means to simplify, right? Simplify the passage. Simplify the passage as much as you can. Sometimes it is possible, sometimes it is not. If it is not possible, don't fret over it. It is okay. You can come back to that question later on. This is one thing that we need to understand, is we need to let go of a question sometime, right? So for example, if I come across a passage for summary and I do not understand anything, anything in it, it is okay to park that question right there and move ahead to rest of the questions, because Parasummary questions, they require a lot of focus. And if if your focus is wavered from anywhere, then there is going to be a problem. So if you're not able to paraphrase it, if you're not able to simplify it or understand it, you have the liberty to park that question right there and move on to the next question. All right, but try to paraphrase. Paraphrasing can also be done with the help of contextual meanings, right? Contextual meaning means I am not very sure of the meaning of the word, but I can guess. I'm able to guess it. Best thing to do is formulate your own summary. You've read it, you've read the passage. What do you think it means to you? Write it down if you have time, or formulate it in your mind. After you've done this, all of this is to be done in, with the question itself. Till now, we have not moved to the options. After you are done formulating your own summary, start comparing the options. It is very important to compare the options. Evaluate the point of difference in these options. Eliminate the options that you think are not correct, and then mark the correct answer. The next question comes, how do we compare options and how do we evaluate the point of differences? And more than that, how do we eliminate options? To mark the correct answer, it should be closest to the summary that you have identified in your mind. If you've been able to do that. If not, the best way to go is by eliminating of options, by evaluating the point of difference. So let's have a look at how do we do that. Let us understand what will be the right option. The right option will not have anything apart from what is given in the passage. So that is one thing that we can use to eliminate options. If there is any extra information, what do you mean by extra information? Information which is not mentioned in the passage, right? If the information is not there in the passage, please try to avoid those options, right? It must not distort information. Distort information means alter or change. All right, it should not alter or change information. It should not be representing something in a different light in the summary. You have to ensure that the information does not change. It also must not leave out any critical information. Something that forms the crux of the passage, if that is left out in the summary, then there's going to be an issue. It must not vary in tone from the passage. We already have a discussion over it right now, that how tones can be used to eliminate or guess the right option. Summaries do not differ in tone from the passage. It will focus on the essence of the passage, not on invaluable information. What exactly are invaluable information? The examples are what you can say are the invaluable information in a passage. So it will not focus on an example. It will not focus on secondary statements or supporting statements. So invaluable information can be examples or secondary or statements which are not really relevant to what the passage is trying to say. Sometimes there can be an introductory sentence, or there can be a rhetorical sentence, or there can be a dialogue in the entire passage, and that may not be really relevant to the main point that the author is trying to say. We will get to know more about it when we start solving questions as in what is a secondary information or a secondary statement. Moving on ahead, I'm sorry, there is a problem that has just happened. The power has gone, and what we are going to do is we are going to wait for a few minutes, try to read what is there on my screen right now. It is how to eliminate options. So we'll wait for a few seconds for the power to come back on. In the meanwhile, if you have any questions, you can throw it my way. I'll try to answer them because I can still see my screen. I am sure that you can also see my screen, but it is dark. Anyway, I don't see that happening right now. I'll just try to tell you what exactly is there. So how to eliminate options. Till now we have understood which of the options will be the correct answer, right? Let us look at what are the salient features of the questions, of the options which need to be eliminated. So for example, if the option has any new idea, even if it is related to the topic, if it is not mentioned in the passage, it is not to be considered. Keep that in mind. So any new information or any new idea, even if you think that it is related to the topic, it is going to be a problem. So this is something that requires a lot of resilience. Resilience to ignore. And the power is back. So it takes a lot of resilience to ignore any new idea, even if it is related to the topic, right? If the option is too generic. What do you mean by too generic? It basically just lightly touches what is there in the passage. It is related to the passage. It may even be covered in the passage, but the option that is given to you is very vague. So if it is very vague, hello Pihu, hi Pihu, hi, hello Rakesh, I'm sure that this is helping you, and thank you. If you understand this, thank you so much. If the option is too generic, it is too vague, you will eliminate it. You would want to eliminate it unless that is the right answer. If the option focuses on a specific example or a part of the topic, right? This is the reason why we want to avoid the examples, because generally they lead to wrong information or wrong answers. So if there is an option that is focusing more on an example that is given, there is a good chance that it will be the wrong answer. If it talks about extremes, so one is too generic, it is talking vaguely about things. Second is, if it is talking about extremes, it is always like that, it is never like that, unless that extremity can be seen in the passage. If you feel that the passage is that extreme, then talking about extreme makes sense. But if the passage is not extreme, then there is going to be an issue if you have extreme options. So how do we identify an extreme options? Presence of words like always, every time, never, all. So unless this is the meaning that is the passage that is coming through from the passage, we do not talk about extremes. And if it is out of scope of the passage, that is irrelevant. It is neither mentioned in the passage nor is it related to the passage, but it may have some similar words, but it is completely out of scope of the passage. So if such a case happens, then we like to eliminate those options. So when solving a para-jumble question, it is extremely important to understand that A, I need to select the right answer, and B, I also need to eliminate all the other options. I need to have reasons to eliminate it, right? So keeping these two things in mind, let us move on to some questions here. These are ex-CAT questions that I'm talking about. All of them have come in the CAT exam previously. I do not expect them to be easy for you. I will help you read these. We will discuss some word meanings, and then we'll want to look at the answers. So this is the first question that I have. To me, a classic means precisely the opposite of what my predecessors understood. Classic, what are we looking at? What classic means? Precisely the opposite of what my predecessors. Who are predecessors? People who came before us. Predecessors understood. A work is classical by reason of its resistance to contemporaneity and supposed universality, by the reason of its capacity to indicate human particularity and the difference in the past epoch. Ooh, difficult words. What is contemporaneity? Contemporary basically means related to today's time. So contemporaneity means the ability of something or the quality of something of belonging in the current time, right? And supposed universality. What do you mean by universality? Universality means something that is universally available, available to everybody. Everybody has an access to it. So it classical by the reason of its resistance to contemporaneity and supposed universality by reason of its capacity to indicate human particularity and difference in the past epoch. Epoch means a timeline or a time frame where something big happened. The classic is not what tells me about shared humanity. What is his view on classic? His view, the author's view on classic is, the classic is not what tells me about shared humanity, or more truthfully put, what lets me recognize myself as already present in the past, what nourishes in me the illusion that everything has been like me and has existed only to prepare the way for me. Now this part here talks about what is not classic for him. So if something lets him recognize as him being present in the past, or something nourishes an illusion for him, and it has existed that way, so if something of this sort happens for him, it is not classic. What is classic for him? Classic is resistance to contemporaneity and supposed universality. All right. Instead, classic is what gives access to radically different forms of human consciousness. What is classic for him? Something that gives access to radically different forms of human consciousness. What do you mean by radically? Radically is an adverb, comes from the word radical. Radical means from the origin. So classic is what gives access to radically different forms of human consciousness, or for any given generation of readers, and thereby expands for them the range of possibilities of what it means to be a human being. So according to the author, this is not what classic means. This is something that the predecessors thought was classic. This is what the classic would mean. All right. Now let's see what are the options. Let's look at the options. Option 1 says a classic is able to focus on contemporary human condition and unified experience of human consciousness. Isn't this what it is the opposite of what was given to us? Now let's go back to the passage very quickly and understand what was given to us with respect to being classic. It says Classic is what gives access to radically different forms of human consciousness for any given generation of readers, right? This option here, it says, it is able to focus on contemporary human condition and unified experience of human consciousness. Passage says different forms of human consciousness. Option says unified experience. So option A is against the idea of the passage. It is opposite, or it contradicts, right? And that is why option 1 is not our answer. Option B says a classical work seeks to resist particularity and temporal difference even as it focuses on common humanity. This here, classical work seeks to resist particularity, is incorrect, right? And temporal difference. So this also here has some variation with respect to what is given in the passage. A classic is a work exploring the new, going beyond the universal, the contemporary, and the notion of unified human consciousness. Going beyond the notion of unified human consciousness. Opposites. Option A says, talks about unified experience. Option C says, it goes beyond the unified human consciousness. It talks about the contemporary. It talks about something, which is not just universal. Isn't this what the passage was also talking about? So this here very succinctly summarizes our entire passage, right? Option D says, classic is a work that provides access to universal experience of human race as opposed to radically different form of consciousness. This again, as opposed to radically different forms of consciousness, is a contradiction. So our correct answer is option C. Now this question, hands down, was, I'd say, one of the more difficult questions of CAT 2017. CAT 2017 as a paper is remembered for having a very difficult verbal section, right? And from there, this was a difficult question. I wanted to start with it because I wanted to give you a flavor that sometimes it can actually become this difficult, right? However, the next few questions that we'll be looking at, they are fairly, simpler in nature, and they do not have as difficult words as this, but we need to understand that there can be a very difficult question or a very simple question. Now, what decides whether the summary based question that you're looking at is difficult or not? The words, the vocabulary, and the usage of those words, usage of idioms and phrases. The more difficult the words that are there, the more difficult it becomes for us to decipher it. All right, so let's look at the next question. A translator of literary work needs a secure hold upon two languages involved, right? Supported by a good measure of familiarity with the two cultures. So what they're talking about here is they're talking about somebody who's a translator, all right? Somebody who is a translator, they need to have a secure hold upon two languages. So if I'm translating from English to Hindi or from Hindi to English, I need to have a good sound understanding of English and of Hindi as well. So if I don't have an understanding of both the languages, I won't be able to be a translator. So two languages involved, supported by a good measure of familiarity with the two cultures. Now, if we are talking about Hindi and English and I'm translating Indian text only, so I'm familiar with the culture here. But let's say English and Spanish, right? If I'm not familiar with Spain or with Spanish culture, right, or any of the countries where Spanish culture is seen, it will become difficult for me to translate, because translation is not just literal, translation of words, right? Translation is also a translation of emotions involved. So I need to have a understanding of the culture. That is what they are saying, that a translator needs to understand the two languages, and he or she also needs to understand the two cultures. For an Indian translating works in an Indian language into English, finding satisfactory equivalence in a generalized Western culture of practices and symbols in the original world would be less difficult than gaining fluent control of contemporary English, right? What would be less difficult for him? Finding satisfactory equivalence in a generalized Western culture. What is generalized Western culture? Where, we have some idea, we have generalized it from here or there, but I'm not very sure about it. So it will be less difficult for him to do that than gaining fluent control of contemporary English. What do we mean by fluent? Fluent means the ability to flow clearly, right? So fluent control is a good grasp of contemporary English. When a Westerner works on texts in Indian languages, the interpretation of cultural elements will be the major challenge, right? So interpretation of cultural elements will be the major challenge here. Why? Because they do not know the culture. He's a Westerner. Okay, Westerner will probably understand the language, but the Westerner will not understand the cultural implications. So, when a Westerner works on texts in Indian languages, the interpretation of cultural elements will be the major challenge. Interpretation of cultural elements, rather than control over the grammar and essential vocabulary of the language concerned. So a Westerner may not understand or may have a little less understanding of Indian culture. They may have a greater understanding of the language or the vocabulary, but culture may be an issue for them. It is much easier to remedy lapses in language in a text translated into English than flaws of content. Remedy means to find a cure or to correct something. Lapses is an error. This error generally happens if the person is inattentive. So remedy lapses in a language. It is easier to correct the errors in a language in a text translated into English than flaws of content. Alright. Since it is easier for an Indian to learn the English language than it is for Briton or American to comprehend Indian culture, translation of Indian texts is better left to Indians. What it is trying to say is, you can learn a language easily, but the culture may be an issue. So learning a language is not very difficult, right? If I'm an Indian and if I'm translating something into English, I can understand the language English. But if a Briton, if a British, or if an American, they want to translate Hindi to English, that becomes a challenge for them because they don't know the cultural implications of what I have, what the text is. I am an Indian, I understand the culture of it, I know the language also. So for me to make that translation, it is easier. A British may know Hindi as a language very well, may know English as a language very well, but because of that missing cultural part, the translation may become difficult. So it is okay, it is always better for people to leave the translation of Indian texts to Indians. This is what the passage is trying to say. Let us look at the options. While translating, the Indian and the Westerner face the same challenges. No, they don't. Indian and Westerners do not face the same challenges. If we are translating Indian text, Indians know about the culture and they know about the language, but the Westerners do not know about the culture. So this here, it goes against the idea of the passage, right? But they have different skill profiles. Again, the passage does not talk about skill profiles. So this here is irrelevant. This is what we say, irrelevant. It has some part taken from the passage, something that alludes to the passage, but they have different skill profiles and the former has advantage. This is something that is not the passage, not the content of the passage. So we eliminate option A right away. As preserving cultural meanings is the essence of literary translation. It starts with preserving cultural meanings is the essence of literary translations. Is that what the passage was about? Do you think the passage was about preserving the essence of literary translations? It was not. What was the passage about? The passage said, while translation, leave the translation to those people who have both the cultural and the language expertise, right? So this is not the content of the passage. This is something which is again irrelevant and out of scope. I have not even read this option completely here, and I know it is wrong because it starts on the wrong foot. As preserving cultural meanings is the essence of literary translation, Indians' knowledge of the local culture outweighs the initial disadvantage of lower fluency in English. They are saying that Indians may have a very good fluency in English, right? So this here is again completely, it actually contradicts what is there in the passage. Option C says, Indian translators should translate Indian texts into English as their work is less likely to pose cultural problems because they have an understanding of the culture as well as the language, which are the cultural problems which are harder to address than the quality of language. Translation of the emotion, translation of the cultural aspect is more difficult as compared to translation of just the language. So let it be to the Indians to translate the Indian text. Is this not what the passage was telling us? Is this exactly what the passage was talking about? So we go with option C. We think option C is the right answer as of now. Let us look at option D. Option D says, Westerners might be good at gaining reasonable fluency in new languages. Are we talking about any language? Are we talking about new language? Were we talking about Westerners gaining fluency in any language? All of these points here, they are irrelevant to the passage because this is not what the content of the passage was. But as understanding the culture reflected in literature is crucial, Indians remain better placed. This here is what we call as a generic option. Right? Why generic? Here we are talking about Westerners, learning new languages, any new language, and then we are talking about understanding the culture reflected in literature is crucial. Which culture? Not mentioned here. Why are we assuming that Indians will remain better placed? If we talk specifically about Indian culture, then Indians remaining better placed makes sense. But if we are talking about some other culture, then definitely this makes no sense, right? So this is a generic option with vague inputs, right? So since this is a generic option with vague inputs, we will eliminate option D and we will go with option C as the correct answer. Is there any doubt here? Anything that you'd like to ask regarding this question or the previous question? The next question, let's have a look at the next question that we have here. The next question is again an XCAT. All the questions that we are discussing today, they are all XCATs. Okay, so this is a CAT 2020, the last CAT that happened. This is one of the latest questions. Let us see how this question fares for us. For nearly a century, most psychologists have embraced one view of intelligence. It says most psychologists have embraced one view of intelligence. It does not say all psychologists. It still talks about most psychologists, right? So most psychologists have embraced one view of intelligence. Individuals are born with more or less intelligence potential or IQ. What is the intelligence potential or intelligence quotient? IQ. This potential is heavily influenced by heredity. What do we mean by heredity? Heredity is something which is inherited. Heredity is something which is inherited. What is inherited? It is passed down from the previous generation to the next generation. So the potential, that is the intelligence or the intelligence quotient, this potential is heavily influenced by heredity, and it is difficult to alter. So if somebody is very intelligent by genetically, then it is difficult to change that. And similarly, if somebody is not very intelligent genetically, then again it is not very easy to change that. Experts in measurement can determine a person's intelligence early in life, currently from paper and pencil measures. So there are methods in place which can determine a person's intelligence, perhaps eventually from examining the brain in action or even scrutinizing her genome, right? Some people even go into the genetic study for that. Recently, criticism of this conventional wisdom has mounted. Criticism has mounted. Mounted means it has arisen. Why a criticism has arisen? Let's see. Biologists ask if speaking of a single entity called intelligence is coherent and question the validity of measures used to estimate heritability of traits in humans who, unlike plants and animals, are not conceived and bred under controlled conditions. So they are asking, what is the question they are asking? If speaking of single entity called intelligence is coherent, their question is intelligence coherent? If you talk about intelligence only as a single entity that is being inherited, is this right? And they question the validity of measures used to estimate heritability of a trait in humans. They are questioning all the tests that have happened till now. All right. So, and why? Because human beings, they are not bred in controlled conditions like plants or animals. So it is easier to study the genetic, to determine how the plant will come up or how the animal will come up using their genetics than the human. There are a lot of other factors that come into play. So we are not going to go into a discussion of this because that is not the agenda, right? Generally, when you come across something of this sort, some question type or some passage of this sort, the first thing that comes to your mind is this is not right, this is not correct, maybe this is right, yes, this is wrong. So you start trying to put in your thoughts here, right? We do not need to put in our thoughts. We do not need to put in our views. Whether we agree to this, whether we agree with this or we don't agree with this is not the concern. This is something that you need to understand while solving parasummary questions, that you have to keep your opinions aside. In the very beginning of the session, I did talk about sticking to the information in the passage. This is what it means. So we are not going to go into a discussion of what other theories could happen or whether the methods that the scientists or the biologists have been using till now, they are right or wrong. We will not talk about that. All we know is that there's one set that says that intelligence can be is heredity, it comes from heredity or is inheritable, and there is other set of biologists who have now started refuting that. They started saying that this may not be the case. So let's look at the options. Let us see what is the essence of the passage. Biologists have questioned the long-standing view that intelligence is a single entity and the attempts to estimate its heritability. Now, when we look at this part of the passage, this is exactly what the passage is talking about. Then we look at this part of the passage, right? And we try to understand what is the need of this. The need for the entire part is to give an introduction or to, build the path to come to this conclusion or to come to this point, that this is what was there earlier. Now the biologists have started questioning it. So when we look at this option here, it very effectively captures the essence of everything. It says that biologists have questioned the long-standing view. So when I say the long-standing view that intelligence is a single entity, isn't this what the entire first few lines talk about? The first few lines give us the idea that intelligence is a single entity or it can be inherited, and this is in the second part of the passage. This is what the biologists have questioned. So this is something that is very close to the summary of the passage. We will keep this option here right now, and we will look at the other options. If there is an option which better encapsulates the idea, then fine. If not, we'll come back to option A. But before we confirm option A as an answer, we have to mandatorily eliminate B, C and D as well. We should never leave a scope of doubt over here. All right. So biologists have questioned the view that intelligence is a single entity, right? This is correct. They have questioned the view. Okay, even if I say that the view here is a little vague because we're talking about a long-standing view, but that is fine. And the ways in which what is inherited. The biologists have not questioned inheritance, right? Biologists have not questioned the ways in which what part of the intelligence is inherited. What they are saying is that how much of it can be inherited is a question, right? Intelligence is a single entity, and is it only heritable is the question. The methods or the ways in which what can be inherited is not the question. So although the first part of the passage is referring or is regarding what is there in the the first part of the sentence is there in the passage, the second part is something which is out of scope, right? The second part of the passage is out of scope, and that is the reason why I will eliminate option B, because in the entire passage we have not talked about the ways or the methods of inheritance. All right, in the entire passage, let alone the crux or the essence in the entire passage. It is not even mentioned. Option C says, biologists have criticized that conventional wisdom that individuals are born with more or less intelligence potential. Biologists have criticized that conventional wisdom with which individuals are born with is more or less intelligence potential. This is not. It should be an is over here. Yeah. Biologists have criticized that conventional wisdom that individuals are born with is more or less intelligence potential. This is not the scope of the passage. This is not even the discussion. So this is incorrect. This is irrelevant to the point that the author is trying to say. Option D says, biologists have started questioning psychologists' view of intelligence as a measurable, immutable characteristic of an individual. This is new information here. If it is a new information, we are anyways going to eliminate it because a summary does not have any new information in it. So that means we will go back to option A, which we had very correctly judged in the very beginning, right? But since this was the first option, we cannot just randomly let it be, right? And then that is why we go back to option A. We mark that as a correct answer, and this is the right answer for us. Moving on to the next question. Again, this is an CAT 2020 itself. For years, movies and television series like crime scene investigation paint an unrealistic picture of the science of voices. That means there is a science of voices, right? But the movies and television series, they paint an unrealistic picture. It is not saying the science of voices does not exist. Science of voices exists, but movies and television series, they paint an unrealistic picture. Keep that in mind. In the 1994 movie Clear and Present Danger, an expert listens to a brief recorded utterance and declares that the speaker is Cuban, aged 35 to 45, educated in Dash Eastern United States. This here is what we'd say is an example. What is it an example of? It is an example of the unrealistic picture that the television and movie series they portray. So the recording is then fed to a supercomputer that matches the voice of that of a suspect, concluding that the probability of correct identification is 90%. The example is still continuing, right? This sequence sums up a good number of misimpressions about forensic phonetics. Phonetics is the study of sounds and study of the voices. So misimpressions, that is to have a misunderstanding or something which is interpreted in the wrong way. This sequence sums up a good number of misinterpretations or misimpressions. All right. Now this sequence, basically this example here, it tells us how this is a good number of misimpressions about forensic phonetics, which have led to errors in real life justice. Now something like this, a misimpression, what has it led to? It has led to errors in real life justice. Indeed, that movie scene exemplifies the so-called CSI effect. This is a dramatized version. This exemplifying. Exemplifying means to increase something. The phenomenon in which judges hold unrealistic expectations of the capabilities of forensic science. Now, what they're trying to say here is that the science of voices is not, it's not that it does not exist, but the movies and television series, by giving examples like this, where they just heard a small sound and they predicted, how tall or where the person is coming from or what is his age or anything. This here is a misimpression. Science of voices exists. It is used, but it cannot be used in this way is what they're trying to say. So what probably could be the correct answer here? Voice recognition has started to feature prominently in crime scene intelligence investigations because of movies and television series. Now let's go back to the passage. From here to here is the example. This here is an explanation of the example, and it is, what is it doing? It is bolstering the first part. Bolstering means to support. This here is a supporting statement. And this here, this last sentence is also a supporting statement, right? So coming back to it, if you look at this option here, it says voice recognition has started to feature prominently in crime scene intelligence investigations because of movies and television series. What it is saying is that voice recognition in real life, it started happening later. It was first introduced in the movies. Actually, it existed. It was incorporated in movies in a very unrealistic manner. But according to option A, it started in the movies first, and looking at that, voice recognition now features in crime scene intelligence investigations. So this here is completely contradictory to the information that is mentioned in the first few lines of the passage, right? Contradictory hai, so we are going to eliminate it right away. Option B says, voice recognition as used in many movies to identify criminals has been used to identify criminals in real life also. Generic, vague, does not capture the essence. It focuses only on a very small part of the passage where it says that voice recognition is used in movies and in real life. That is what they have said already. But what is the idea? The agenda here is that although it is used in real life as well, in movies they have exemplified it. They are giving us unrealistic expectations or unrealistic example of how voice recognition is used. So this option B here does not give us the idea of something being unrealistic. It does not capture the core of the passage that voice recognition in movies is being used in a very unrealistic manner, and then it sets an unrealistic expectation in real life. So option B is incorrect because it just does not match the tone, the information that the passage is trying to give us. Although voice recognition is often presented as evidence in legal cases, its scientific basis can be shaky. This here is not mentioned in the passage at all. We are not talking about whether the science is correct or science is not correct. This is against the idea of the passage. And this is, I won't even say this is extrapolation. This is just some distortion of, the information that is there in the passage. This is just a very, very bad distortion. So option C is eliminated. Movies and televisions have led to the belief that the use of forensic phonetics in legal investigations is robust and foolproof. Isn't this what they are saying? That, the recording is then fed to a supercomputer that matches the voice of that voice to of a suspect, concluding that the probability of correct identification is 90%. 90% is what we'd say is robust and foolproof. So this is the error. They have led to the belief. That is, there is a belief that exists, and movies and televisions have led us to that belief, and option D is the correct answer. Right? So we are going to solve one more question very correctly. Very quickly. Let's look at this question. This is again a CAT 2020 question. This is the last question that we are discussing today. If you need more information regarding parasummaries or how do we solve questions based on different types of questions in CAT, or if you want to very quickly prepare for CAT 2021, go ahead, have a look at our description. You would see that there are various batches mentioned. There is a lot of information that is given there regarding different batches and different products that we have, that you can have a look at. Go have a look at it. Go visit our website. You'll get a lot more information. If you are a CAT aspirant for 2021 or for 2022, definitely go have a look at it. If you want to prepare for any other exam as well, you can definitely look at our website, and you'd get to know the range of exams that we will help you prepare for. All right, but let's concentrate on this question right now. As Soviet power declined, the world became to some extent multipolar. What is multipolar? What is pole? Pole is a point, right? Multipolar means that there are multiple points. So there's a north pole and a south pole, right? The end points. Now, multipolar means that there are more than north and south poles. There are a lot of poles. And Europe strove to define an independent identity. Strove is a past tense for strive. Strive means to make an effort. So Europe was making a very strong effort to define an independent identity. What a journey Europe has undertaken to reach this point. It had in every century changed its internal structure and invented new ways of thinking about the nature of international border. international order. Now at the culmination of an era, culmination means the highest point. Now at the culmination of an era, Europe, in order to participate in it, felt obliged to set aside the political mechanisms through which it had conducted its affairs for 3.5 centuries. Now, as this era was ending, Europe, in order to participate in it, in order to participate in the international order, what it did, it felt obliged to set aside the political mechanisms through which it had conducted its affairs. We all know that a lot of European countries, they were going across in the world trying to colonize different countries. So now what they're trying to do is they're trying to bring about some changes. They are trying to set aside the political mechanisms that they themselves had put in place, right? Impelled means to force. Impelled also by the desire to cushion the emergent unification of Germany, the new European Union established a common currency in 2002, which was euro, if I'm not wrong, and a formal political structure in 2004. It proclaimed a Europe united, whole and free, adjusting its differences by peaceful mechanisms. So this here is basically talking about the unification of Europe and how it is now trying to change its own internal politics, and they're trying to unify the emergent unification of Germany, the new European Union. So this is what they're talking about. The political structure that they are talking about is the European Union, right? The formation of European Union. So this here talks about how Europe has evolved and now what Europe is trying to do and why is it trying to do it. Let's look at the options that we have. Europe has consistently changed in keeping with the changing world order and has culminated in a united Europe. When we go back to the passage, does it give us the idea that it proclaimed a Europe united, whole and free, adjusting its differences by peaceful mechanisms? This is one thing. Then we say what a journey Europe has undertaken to reach this point. What point? Strove to define an independent identity. In every century, it had changed its internal structure. Now they are trying to participate in it by setting aside the political mechanisms. So when we look at this option here, that Europe has consistently changed in keeping with the changing world order, this here does not give us the complete meaning. And that has culminated in the United Europe. They're still striving for it, right? So option A, it touches on the passage very lightly, but it does not capture the essence. It does not talk about all the things that Europe is trying to do right now. So option A is eliminated because of being too vague in nature, right? The establishment of a formal political structure in Europe was hastened by the unification of Germany and emergence of multipolar world. Very intelligent option here. What they've done is they have taken words from the passage, exact words, they've used it here, and this is what will confuse us. The order of the information in option B is completely, random, and it does not make sense. So what they're trying to say here is that European Union was formed because of the emergence of multipolar world and because Germany was unifying. This is not the agenda of the passage. So this here, although it has taken information, relevant information of the passage, what they've done here is they have changed the order of information, which gives us a completely different meaning right now. So they do this. They'll take information from the passage, sometimes exact words, sometimes paraphrased words, and then they will change the order of the information. So try to understand. That is why we go back over and over again regarding what is there in the passage. It is okay to read and reread the questions. Europe has consistently changed its internal structure to successfully adapt to the changing world order. Let's go back. They are trying, so world has become to some extent multipolar, correct? Europe strove to define an independent entity, correct? It had in every century changed its internal structure and invented new ways of thinking about nature of the international order. I don't know why I'm saying border again and again. Europe has consistently changed its internal structure to successfully adapt to the changing world order. Are they always doing that to adapt to the changing world order? No, that is not what they're doing. That is one. They have invented new ways of thinking about the nature of international order. So what they've done, they've taken information which is given in the same sentence and portrayed in such a way that it comes immediately next, immediately one after the other, so that it looks as if it is linked. Two different ideas mashed up in the same sentence still not capturing the essence. The essence of the passage is that Europe has chosen, basically, what Europe is doing is that it is trying to change its own. What they're doing is they have changed, or they're trying to change the political system that they have put in place in different countries. They're trying to bring in, they're trying to unify Europe with respect to currency. They're trying to reduce the differences in Europe so that they can adapt to the emerging multipolar world. Everywhere they are saying, so in option C it says that it has changed its internal structure. It has changed its internal structure, but how? It is very vague. To successfully adapt to the changing world order, they have not just changed their internal structure, they've changed a lot of it. So this option here does not talk about the money part, the economics part, where they talked about introduction of euro. This option C, does not talk about unification of Europe into European Union. It does not talk about why it has brought about political changes. It is just that it is changing itself. So this here is also something which is slightly vague. It does not capture all the main points. It does not capture the crucial points. What are the crucial points? That Europe has chosen to lower political and economic heterogeneity. They are changing the political scenario. Lower economic heterogeneity. Heterogeneity means differences. How are they lowering economic heterogeneity? By the introduction of euro. Why is Europe doing that? In order to adapt itself to an emerging multipolar world. And this here actually captures the essence of the passage, right? So this was a CAT 2020 question to you. Not a very difficult question per se. One thing that can, one thing that was a little difficult in this is that the options were pretty close. So a lot of people ended up marking A or C, because it does capture some part of the information of the passage. It is not, it does not capture the crux of the passage. Only option D talks about the crucial information as well. So option A and C is what we call vague options. All right. Having said that, parajumbles is a topic. Parasummary is a topic that is very frequently, appearing in all the exams right now. A very important topic as such, and the only method to be an expert in this is to solve a lot more questions. To be able to solve parasummary questions effectively, there are 3 things that you need to do. First is you need to start reading a lot. You need to start read a lot of books, read newspapers, editorials, because these are the sources for the parasummaries generally. So read newspaper editorials, read blogs, read travel blogs, read basically. And once you're done reading, the second thing that you need to do is write down the word meanings, understand, and then third thing that you need to do is paraphrase and summarize. So, when you start reading, read with the agenda of summarizing. Read with the agenda that after I am done reading this information, I am going to summarize it. Only then will you be able to build your expertise in this particular question type. Not a very difficult question type. It is basically asking you what the passage has just told you. But if you do not have the requisite reading skills for it, then it becomes a little bit of a challenge, because the options are very close by sometimes. So having said that, that's all from my side. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a very patient audience. And if there are any questions that you'd like to ask regarding whatever questions we have done till now, please feel free to drop your comments. I'd be more than happy to answer your questions. Definitely go have a look at the description. You'll get to know a lot more about EduCrack and the things that EduCrack is doing right now, the batches that we have. But as of now,